Welcome everyone to Keep It Classy Tech. This video is going to be my recommended settings for the Samsung S95B QD OLED. Now there is quite a bit of panel variance on, well, any TV, but especially with Samsung, so they may not work perfectly for you, but it should ballpark it for just about everyone's panel, short of any changes mid-cycle or with updates later on, but generally updates won't affect picture quality. So we're going to use Filmmaker Mode for SDR and HDR. The reason is if you try to use different modes for both, it will keep it in the same mode and you would have to change it all the time. So Filmmaker Mode is going to be the most accurate out of the box. So that's going to be our starting point. Now in SDR, this is going to focus on not being super bright, but also not being at like 100 nits. It's going to be somewhere in the 200 nit range, but you can adjust the brightness how you see fit. First thing you want to do though is pull the contrast down a lot. Pull it down to 25, and then the color pull down to 23. Also, the sharpness setting should be at 0, that is neutral. Now under clarity settings, this is all the personal preference stuff. That's motion, that's up to you. If you want to put the values at 0 so that you get noise reduction with, like, say, cable box, you can do that. When it comes to the color tone, you want to use warm to, and contrast enhancer absolutely should be off. Now, the white balance, again, there's too much panel variance to make any recommendations there. For the gamma, we're going to use BT1886, which is a touch brighter than it should be, so we're going to pull it down to -1. But that might hurt your shadow detail a little bit, so then you want to bump that up a click or two. Again, panel variance, for mine it's 2, for yours it might be 1. Color space setting, you can use auto or put it into custom. At this point in time, the color gamut can sometimes get messed up, and putting it into custom can kind of help alleviate that bug. Either way, it's the same. It'll be 709 for SDR. Now, peak brightness, if it's a really dark room, you go ahead and throw that to off and then adjust the brightness slider at the top how you need it. Or if you put it to medium and then adjust the brightness slider down a bit, just balance it out to your room and what you're comfortable with. Alright, now for Samsungs, there's no game picture mode. You have to go down to connection and game mode settings, and then set this to auto if your system supports ALLM, or auto low latency mode, or just toggle it to on if it's a dedicated port for gaming. And then when you go back to your settings, then you have game mode. So for SDR game mode, brightness is going to be completely up to you. Contrast, again, we're going to want to pull that down so that the TV isn't clipping. And we're going to put it down to 25 so that it's within a couple of clicks of the color setting, which we want to have at 23. Contrast and color interact with each other, and we do want to pull the color down a little bit to help with that oversaturation out of the box. So now the rest of the settings more or less are going to be the same as our SDR movie mode. So I'm going to use BT1886 and drop it 1 click, and then turn the shadow detail up 2. Now if you find that too dark for your room, you can switch gamma to 2.2, which is non-adjustable. And then again, for the peak brightness, this is going to be up to you in your room. However, if you want to use black frame insertion, which dims the TV down, I recommend just using high with max brightness, and then coming here to your game motion plus settings and turn on clear motion, and then that implements the black frame insertion up to 60 Hz content, so like a Nintendo Switch. And I would recommend doing that for like a Nintendo Switch. It really helps with the motion resolution. Alright, now we're going to move over to HDR, which again is going to be Filmmaker Mode. So now when it comes to the contrast setting, out of the box it is clipping a lot. So if you lower the contrast setting, you help with the clipping. However, you lose a lot of brightness. So personally, I would just put it to 45. I've noticed a pretty big difference in bright detail being visible at 45 without losing too much brightness. And then for the oversaturated colors in HDR, I recommend putting the color to 20. And again, for all these modes, sharpness should be at 0. And then for Filmmaker, your picture clarity settings, again, these are up to you. The judder reduction is for lower frame rate, so just about all movie and TV content, and blur reduction is for 60 Hz content. Clear motion is BFI, or black frame insertion, and noise reduction is a filter to help with noisy content. However, especially on low bitrate content. I don't see it do too much, so it's up to you. Again, contrast enhancer, I'd strongly recommend having that off. It hurts contrast, it doesn't help. Color tone, again, should be warm 2. And then now our gamma says ST2084, and it is too bright in the midtones out of the box, so lowering that to -2 or so should help. And then your shadow detail, again, this is going to be panel specific, and I always recommend setting black level or shadow detail with what's called a pluge brightness pattern, PLUGE brightness pattern. You can get one, find one online for free and put on a USB drive, or get the Spears and Munzel disc or something, and that'll be fine. So again, for the color, if you just set it to custom and make sure that it says DCI P3, you should be good for just about everything. And then your peak brightness, always have it at high. If you drop it to medium, it's just going to kill your HDR brightness. So just keep it at high. Alright, now again, going back into game mode, but also just want to point out, if you have any issues, make sure your input signal plus here is enabled for the port that you're using. That's how it activates the HDMI 2.1 features. And then in the game mode settings, once you have game mode on, you want to go to the HDR settings there. And we are going to enable HGIG, even though it's not HGIG the way that it should be. There is still tone mapping being done over it, but it does help the tone mapping algorithm. So you want to enable game HDR, and HDR 10 plus gaming for now you can have off because there are no HDR 10 plus games. So then we're going to go back into the picture settings, and we're going to have the brightness at 50. Again, the contrast, if you want to make sure you get some more detail, pull that to 45. Sharpness 0, and then color turn down to 20. I believe it was 30 at default, which is way too high. Contrast enhancer off, color tone warm 2 again, the gamma ST2084 setting, and shadow detail, again, pretty much match what you did in Filmmaker. Game mode is going to be way too lifted and bright in the midtones no matter what you do, but it does help move it in the right direction. And then again, peak brightness, keep that at high. Alright, now if you have a PlayStation 5, when you are doing the HDR setup screen, ignore what it says entirely, because again, it's going to keep tone mapping over top of that game HDR HGIG setting. What you want to do is turn it all the way down, and then count your clicks, and you want to go 16 clicks. And then on the Xbox, if you pull both triggers and both bumpers on the top of the controller at the same time, when you are in the HDR setup menu, it will tell you the nit values in the top right of the screen. You want to set it to 1100 on both patterns for the Xbox. And then for both Xbox and PlayStation, the dark screens you want completely dark all the way down as low as it goes. Then for games that have HDR sliders and that don't use HGIG, just set those to around 1000 or 1100 nits. Now, all of this video, of course, was just to use the settings that I recommend. Of course, you can set it up however you like, and if you need, say, a really bright mode for sports, or a very, very bright room, feel free to make adjustments, or use either movie or standard picture mode. It's very rare that anyone should need to use the vivid, which really just makes the image purple and not any brighter. Alright, and then that's going to be it. So I hope you have found this video to be helpful, and if you did, if you could leave a comment below and hit the like button, that would be appreciated. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a good one.